Okay, today we're going to talk about information literacy. What I'm going to do today is just summarise some of the main points from our first couple of sessions in the first part of the course and try and make clear why I think information literacy, the subject, is important for both addiction studies and counselling students. A number of people have asked me in the past why it is included when it was offered as a face-to-face delivery, and I think it's important to look at that. But we'll look at a couple of the key definitions first, and then look at how it relates to the area of counselling and addiction studies. First, thing that we have to look at is definitions. So there's the definition of what information is, one of the definitions. And it says there, technically, it is a sequence of symbols that is interpreted as a message that affects a system. And then down below, it talks about Plato and Aristotle and says of the mind. And what that is about is that Plato and Aristotle were probably our first psychologists, in fact. They were philosophers, and they sat around talking about life, love and the nature of the universe, and basically modern psychology and counselling comes from those early Greek philosophers. Now what they recognised is that communication and the way people interpret communication and signals is vital to our understanding of the world. We're now in the early part of the 21st century, and we have very many different sorts of information. But what all those information sources add up to is a way of understanding the world and the universe around us. If we just skip ahead here, this is a slide of the global adult literacy. And on the side there are the various kind of keys that show that New Zealand, and places like New Zealand, Australia, and many of the developed world, which is in blue, have in theory very high rates of global literacy. And literacy is one of the major or key elements of information. To understand things, you often need to read it in whatever form. But what these blue slides don't show is that, in fact, when we have a look at that and think that we're a very literate country, there are all sorts of issues that come around that literacy in terms of the makeup of our population and how many people really do have proper access to literacy and understanding of the world around them through that means. So if we just skip ahead here, it says here just that in New Zealand, for instance, in terms of literacy, which is reading, however you manage to do that, even on a computer screen or from a book, that 50% of adults have literacy and numeracy needs. And that's between the ages of 16 and 65. Unemployed people have the lowest levels of literacy, and Maori and Pacifica people are at the lowest levels of numeracy, and they have major problems with literacy as well. And what that means in terms of what we're studying at Welltech in both addiction studies and counselling is that we're working in areas where we're often dealing with people that are severely disadvantaged, whether it's through addiction or personal issues because of the nature of the environment they've been brought up in. Now we know that, as we'll see a little bit later on in the summary, that one of the reasons that people are often in those situations is because they don't have access to knowledge, education, and because of that they don't have power in the society that they should have, and therefore as addiction practitioners and counsellors we're in the process and the situation of helping them address those things. So that's from a wider kind of perspective. This is one definition of information literacy, and in fact I've seen something like 30 definitions. But the main thing here is that it says people who are information literate understand and have a set of abilities enabling to recognise when information is needed. They have the capacity to locate, evaluate, and use effectively that needed information. Now, if they don't have that ability, they're often severely disadvantaged in any society that they're part of, whether it's New Zealand or Australia or Papua New Guinea or wherever. So we need to bear that in mind when we're looking at the subject of information literacy and the fact that knowledge is power, and that without the means to access knowledge and information, people don't have the power that they should or could have. I'm just going to skip that. These are just some of the summaries of the information that we do use, and of course what we did cover in our workshop is that things like text written, blogs, wiki, and other social environment, non-verbal wisdom and intuition are part of a historical timeline that now in the 21st century books are only one method of written information or pictorial information. We have many other sources that we have to sort out. So the knowledge of how to do that is vital for anybody, particularly people working with other people in the helping professions. So the process involved in garnering knowledge and information literacy are these things here. And the first thing to note is that attitudes, which includes confidence and the use of emotions and values, is vital for people that are working with other people to instill a sense of confidence and ability in them. And to do that, they have to have knowledge of the means and access to information. Otherwise, they're not going to be able to do the last thing on the list there, which is engage productively with their peers and people in general. Why do we need information? In a couple of slides we'll see that information is necessary to gain knowledge, and knowledge is necessary for power within our society. But information literacy is a prerequisite for all these things here, and I just want to talk quickly about a couple of them. The first one that is really important there on that list in terms of counselling is personal empowerment. Without feeling empowered and without feeling that you have a stake in the society around you, you're not able to fully engage with that society. And often, as a result of that, you are left in situations where you're seeking help and support for yourself. If any counsellor or addictions practitioner is working in an effective way, what they're doing is working alongside that person in order to help them gain personal empowerment. And one of the means to that is through knowledge and the organisation of knowledge. Without that, the second item on the list there, which is called social inclusion, is not going to be attained, and people often become or feel isolated from the society that they're part of. And it leads to a thing that we talk about in sociology called anomie, or a sense of exclusion and estrangement from the society around you. And as a result of that, it leads to things like, or could lead to things like suicide and a lack of engagement with the society, and things like crime and the use of drugs may flow on from that. The other thing that's important is that you are in a course where you're very much part of the academic system. And although in both degrees you'll be working in placement situations with other people, and you'll be feeding back to your fellow students. You will be doing a lot of theory work, and you will be asked to do research in a number of areas in human services. So in academia, we need this literacy to help us ask the right questions and also know where to go to actually find the information that we need to answer those questions. As I said before, Sir Francis Bacon, who was a major philosopher, he was also a playwright and a poet, among a number of other things, said that knowledge is power. What we're particularly interested, though, is, in the sense of our courses here, is academic knowledge. And what we need to do is distinguish academic knowledge and the need for academic knowledge to inform our practice and our work with people from what we call common sense knowledge. Otherwise, why come to any institution, whether it's a university or WellTech? I'm not going to go through all of these slides, but just if we look at the definitions at the top there, what we're particularly concerned with in information literacy when it comes to academic knowledge are the difference between those particular types of knowledge. Common sense knowledge is knowledge that ordinary people use to make sense of their daily lives. And the thing about that is that while we use that term common sense, what we know from our studies in psychology and sociology is that common sense does not always make sense. It's not always the right answer. So academic knowledge is the knowledge that we're aiming for in our courses here. The knowledge that scholars, experts or scientists create to understand the world, explain how things work and how they could be improved. And as a result of that, it leads to the thing that we're not going to talk a lot about here at the moment in this course, but a thing called research. And research informs most of the theories that we're involved in the counselling area and in psychology. And basically research is really just the ordered gathering of knowledge. But to gather that knowledge, you have to know how to go about it, and you have to be as much aware of the sources that we need as humanly possible. And so that's a lot of what this course is really aimed at. The other thing is, in terms of why this course is part of these degrees, in fact, of a lot of academic study, whether it's in the human services or even engineering or information technology, a lot of it is about the ability to think critically. The knowledge that you have and that you gain, whether it's by reading or by other sources, is, as it says there, not to contradict or confute or make things more complicated, but to have enough information to really weigh up and consider the issues that you might be dealing with. As I said, just coming to the end of this little presentation, we're in an academic situation. As it says there, it says you become a researcher and deliver information in writing, visual, audio, speaking, behaviour or other means. Now that's not just people like myself that are your tutor, but over the course of the next 3 years, you, whether you're doing addiction or counselling studies, will be asked to give presentations to your peers. You'll be asked to actually do online assessments of clients, and a whole host of other things where you're gathering information. You may be actually writing it up, but you're also being asked to draw conclusions and make some plans as to how you would proceed to assist that person, whether it's in a general counselling area or in the area of addictions. And that's it. Sorry, just trying to get a handle on this mouse here.